But after all, Mr. Sprague's troubles, for he is a single man with no ties, are in a sense selfish. It is perhaps in the homes, or more properly in the residences of the rich, that the great silent tragedies are being enacted every day, tragedies of which the fortunate poor know and can know nothing. I saw such a case only a few nights ago at the house of the Ashcroft Fowlers, where I was dining. As we went in to dinner, Mrs. Ashcroft Fowler said in a quiet aside to her husband, "Has Meadows spoken?" He shook his head rather gloomily and answered, "No, he has said nothing yet." I saw them exchange a glance of quiet sympathy and mutual help, like people in trouble who love one another. They were old friends, and my heart beat for them. And all through the dinner, as Meadows, he was a butler, poured out the wine with each course, I could feel that some great trouble was impending over my friends. After Ashcroft Fowler had risen and left us, and we were alone over our port wine, drew my chair near to Fowler's, and I said, "My dear Fowler, I'm an old friend, and you'll excuse me if I seem to be taking a liberty, but I can see that you and your wife are in trouble." "Yes," he said very sadly and quietly, "we are." "Excuse me," I said. "Tell me, for it makes a thing easier if one talks about it. Is it anything about Meadows?" Yes, he said, "it is about Meadows." There was a silence for a moment, but I knew already what Fowler was going to say. I could feel it coming. "Meadows," he said presently, constraining himself to speak with as little emotion as possible, "is leaving us." "Poor old chap," I said, taking his hand.
Okay, so now he happens to visit his friend's place, Mr. and Mrs. Ashcroft Fowler's, over dinner. So now during the dinner, what's happening? There's some trouble happening in the household. He has no idea what it is. So both husband and wife, they are looking very upset. They're looking upset and they're looking at each other. And he could understand that there is some kind of a suffering, some kind of a problem happening in the house, in the family. And the husband, the wife is asking, like, has Meadows spoken to the husband? So he's just shaking his head and saying, no, he has not said anything yet. So this man, our friend, the writer, he's there. He's trying to understand what's happening. What are these people talking about? What this couple is trying to talk about. So now he's feeling terribly sad for the friends. So he understood there's some family tragedy happening. So he wants to make it easier for them. So what is he saying? And he feels terrible for them. So what is he doing? So he's sitting, going close to them after the dinner. What is he saying? I'm an old friend, and you'll excuse me if I seem to be taking a liberty, but then I can understand you're in some trouble. So why don't you just tell it to me? So when you share it with me, you would feel better. So then Mr. and Mrs. Ashcroft Fowler. So what is he saying, the husband? Yes, we are in trouble. So what is it? So is it anything about Meadows? So yes, it is about Meadows. So who is Meadows? Meadows is their butler. So now what is the tragedy or what is the problem in the household? That Mr. Meadows, he is leaving us. That is, the butler has given his notice. So he has decided to stop working for the Ashcroft Fowlers. So this is like a big jolt, a big tragedy for them. I mean, it's very comic, but the way they are taking it is it's as if an earth-shattering event. So their life would come to an end when any of the servants would give notice and leave. Why? Because they are dependent on all these people. So when a servant is not around, their daily routine, their lives of comfort comes to an end. So now see what the writer is saying. Poor old chap, I said, taking his hand. Please continue.
"It's hard, isn't it?" he said. Left last winter, no fault of ours. We did everything we could, and now Meadows." There was almost a sob in his voice. "He hasn't spoken definitely as yet," Fowler went on, "but we know there's hardly any chance of his staying." Does he give any reason?" I asked. "Nothing specific," said Fowler. "It's just a sheer case of incompatibility. Meadows doesn't like us. He put his hand over his face and was silent. I left very quietly a little later, without going up to the drawing room. A few days afterwards, I heard that Meadows had gone. The Ashcroft Fowlers, I am told, are giving up in despair. They're going to take a little suite of 10 rooms and 4 baths in the Grand Palaway Hotel and rough it there for the winter. Yet one must not draw a picture of the rich in colors altogether gloomy. There are cases among them of genuine light-hearted happiness. I have observed this especially the case among those of the rich who have the good fortune to get ruined, absolutely and completely ruined. They may do this on the stock exchange or by banking or in a dozen other ways. The business side of getting ruined is not difficult. Once the rich are ruined, they are, as far as my observation goes, all right. They can then have anything they want. I saw this point illustrated again just recently. I was walking with a friend of mine and a motor passed bearing a neatly dressed young man, chatting gaily with a pretty woman. My friend raised his hat and gave it a jaunty and cheery swing in the air as if to wave goodwill and happiness. Poor old Edward Overjoy, he said, as the motor moved out of sight. What's wrong with him? I asked. Haven't you heard? Said my friend. He's ruined, absolutely cleaned out, not a cent left. Dear me, I said, that's awfully hard. I suppose he'll have to sell that beautiful motor? My friend shook his head.
Okay, so back to the Ashcroft Fowlers. So what was the tragedy there? Their butler, Mr. Meadows, was leaving, and both the husband and wife, they were in a state of shock. So it was a terrible time for them. So what is the husband again saying? It's really hard. And their other servant, Franklin, he left last winter, and he's saying we didn't do anything to them. So it was no fault of ours. We did everything we could do, and now what is happening? Even Meadows is going. So two blows, one after the other. First Franklin, and now Meadows. So it was as if he was about to cry. He was almost sobbing. And then again, he's saying he hasn't spoken definitely as yet, but then we know there's hardly any chance that he will stay back. So, what is the reason? Nothing specific. It's just a case of incompatibility. Incompatibility, as in we don't match. So, Meadows is not comfortable in that house. Maybe their ways are different. So, they are not compatible. It's not a perfect fit. So now he's putting his hand on his face and he's sitting as if there has been a death in the family. And look at the next paragraph. So you have the writer slowly leaving without going up to the drawing room. So when you're visiting people, you have the nicety of talking, having fun, and saying goodbye. And also, he doesn't do all that this time because the whole atmosphere is one of solemnity and tragedy. So in that kind of a house, you don't make a lot of noise, and also it's as if somebody had died. That's the kind of atmosphere created at the going away of this butler. And then after some days, he came to know that Meadows had left them. He had made up his mind and he had left the Ashcroft Fowler family. And then what did they do? That family, they gave up in despair. They were so terribly upset. So now they're going to take a little suite of 10 rooms and 4 baths in this Grand Palava hotel. So they have lost their butler. So now in despair, they have booked 10 rooms, a suite of 10 rooms and 4 baths. You can see the height of luxury. So they're going to go and stay there and they're going to sit and cry there. Why? Because they have lost their butler. And they're going to rough it there for the winter. So they're going to have a tough time in the winter. Do you think anybody will have a bad time or a hard time at a grand luxurious hotel? No. But the language here, the thing is written in a very satiric manner that they're going to have a tough time staying in a hotel, and it's not your ordinary lodging place with rats and cockroaches. This is actually a luxurious place, and that too they have booked a suite, and not of 1 or 2 rooms but of 10 rooms and 4 baths. And then he's coming to the next example. So now he's saying there are cases among them of genuine light-hearted happiness. So saying there are people who are happy, even rich people who are happy. So before this, we saw this example of Spugs, who was unhappy, single. And the next was this family, Fowler, Ashcroft Fowlers. They were also unhappy. So now he's going to talk about happy people who had lost everything, but still they were happy. So this case is observed among the rich people who have the good fortune to get ruined. So there are people who go into the stock exchange or get into banking, do something, and then lose all their money. And then it just happens, and then it shows that business side of getting ruined is not difficult. That is, your business, when it is doomed, it's not going to be the end of the world. So rich people, that is, when they get ruined, they behave as if nothing happened. Why? Because they can then have anything that they want. That is what they had, they lost, but then they still have more money and wealth, and still they can get more things that they want. So he's giving this example that one day he was walking with a friend, and when they were walking, a motor passed by. That is, a car passed by, and in the car was this young man, neatly dressed, and he was talking quite happily with a pretty woman. So this friend and a writer, Oscar Wilde, they were walking. So this friend, he raised his hat, and he was swinging it in the air to say, to kind of wish goodwill and happiness. That English custom, you take out your hat and you wish people. So he was doing that. So the car passed by. So this friend, what was he saying? Poor old Edward Overjoy. See the word, I mean name. His name, his surname is Overjoy. So Edward Overjoy, and the car went out of sight. So now Oscar Wilde is asking, now what's wrong with Overjoy? So haven't you heard? He's ruined, absolutely cleaned out, not a cent left. So what is the news about this man, this very happy-looking man who just passed by that wonderful motor car? That he is ruined. That is, he has lost all his business, whatever, absolutely cleaned out. That he's lost every penny that he had, not a cent left. So now Oscar Wilde is saying, "Oh my God!" So that must be terrible, isn't it? So that would mean he will have to send this beautiful motor also, right? I mean, that is our common understanding of ruin. So the friend is shaking his head. So friend is saying, "No, he doesn't need to do that." So why it is so? We'll see.
Oh no, he said, he'll hardly do that. I don't think his wife would care to sell that. My friend was right. The Overjoys have not sold their motor. Neither have they sold their magnificent sandstone residence. They are too much attached to it, I believe, to sell it. Some people thought that they would have given up their box at the opera, but it appears not. They are too musical to care to do that. Meantime, it is a matter of general notoriety that the Overjoys are absolutely ruined. In fact, they haven't a single cent. You could buy Overjoy, so I am informed, for $10. But I observe that he still wears a seal-lined coat worth at least 500.
Okay. So now what our writer, Oscar Wilde, he's assuming that ruining means you're totally washed out, you have no money, so therefore you have to sell whatever property you own, right? Otherwise you'll not be able to survive. But then the rich people, they get ruined in a different manner. So what is he saying? He'll hardly sell his motor, the beautiful motor car. I don't think his wife would care to sell that. So he's saying the wife would not allow to do that. And then the Overjoys, they did not sell their car, neither have they sold their wonderful sandstone residence. So they have a wonderful property, a wonderful home. They haven't sold that house. And why? Because they're too attached to sell it. Then some people thought that maybe because they had this financial doom, they would sell their box at the opera. We have already discussed, right, what a box is at the opera. So maybe they would have given up that. But then he understands that it appears that they hadn't even given up that opera box. So they are retaining all these things of luxury and comfort. So where is the ruin? That is the irony. Maybe they are too musical to care to do that. So they cannot afford to leave that. And meantime, it's a matter of general notoriety. That is, everybody is gossiping and talking that the Overjoys are absolutely ruined. But then when you look at it, they still retain all the wealth and property they had, but still they're talking about being ruined. In fact, they become so ruined they don't have a single cent. And then the talk is that you can buy the Overjoy people, the Overjoy, for $10, that's their net worth. That's the talk they're talking about. So when these millionaires and billionaires, when they talk about being ruined, maybe it is just one part of their investment in banking or the share bazaar or something of that kind. And people like us, when we talk about our ruining, it is like complete ruin. Everything is lost, and we end up selling our property, our homes, and our furniture, whatever, our gold. That's how we become ruined. But then these very, very rich millionaires, for them, ruining is nothing. But still, they go about town talking about absolutely ruined. But then when you look at it, they still retain all these luxurious belongings, wealth, and property. And this man, Overjoy, he still wears a seal lined coat worth at least 500, and that is 500 pounds. So that shows how expensive kind of a clothing he wears. And still, what is the label given to the Overjoys? That they are absolutely ruined. So this is a tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic essay on the rich people and the joys, the trials and tribulations of rich people, which we common ordinary people don't really understand, because their world is different, our world is different. So their yardstick of joy and happiness is something else altogether compared to what we consider to be happy and joyous by our own standards. So I hope you have got the irony and sarcasm clear.